Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. Welcome back. We're happy to be here live on YouTube. I am Steven Conway, along with Jeremy Finestone, as always. It has been one of the busier weeks I can think of in wrestling for a while, and we saw some really good stuff. Jeremy, you were at the AEW pay-per-view live. There was a raft of shows from just about every company doing really interesting stuff. This has been a fun week to be a wrestling fan. Are you caught up? Do you have your breath back?
I'll be honest with you, last week I came in here guns blazing about having to watch 12 hours of wrestling, a Fantastic Mania, and then all of a sudden I got to come in here and answer, like, how'd you feel about watching all that wrestling this week? And I'm like, honestly, it was pretty fucking great. It was pretty fucking great. I'm exhausted. It's one of those just like, it's a whirlwind of wrestling, and you have to take notes and be on top of everything. I have to admit, Conway's going to help me along with a couple of matches that I wasn't able to catch because, well, I'm a grown man with other obligations. But I got through the nuts and the bolts of it. AEW Revolution was great live. We can touch on that maybe later if we got time, but let's talk some New Japan, man.
Yeah, we divided and conquered a little bit. Like I said, Jeremy was in attendance there. You've had some, I mean, you've been able to, not only have you been seeing great stuff on TV, you've been doing great stuff live. I mean, these people just keep coming into your backyard with these great shows.
Not complaining. And it appears that I'm going to Double or Nothing now too. So this is, the streak continues, my friend. We shall continue on and sally forth with the quality.
But we have plenty of New Japan to talk about. We're going to talk about the two main shows. Of course, the first two nights of the New Japan Cup, one of which was the anniversary show, which had a wonderful tag team title match at the end of it. Some news. We've got some hints at the Bullet Club's future, but not the full story yet. And we have some future title matches set up. So more questions than answers in a good storytelling way. They set up things that's going to pay off down the road. So we're going to take a look at those. We're also going to talk a little bit about Ring of Honor, and then we'll go into some other things from there. But if you're ready to kick in, let's just go ahead and do it. And we'll start with the fifth, the Korakuen Hall, the first night of the New Japan Cup.
How about those brackets busting right out the gate?
Man, I was sweating, and we're going to talk about that. So, yeah, we'll get into that whole thing. So let's Korakuen Hall on the 5th. We'll go very come up with some very quick things here. The undercard was good. There was good wrestling on this undercard, but we are going to move through it relatively quickly with just some notes because we got a lot to talk about. And so we'll start with that. The Mighty Don't Kneel. That would be Zack Sabre and Kosei Fujita in this case defeated Tama Tonga and Ryohei Oiwa in the opener. This was good stuff. Particularly from Tama Tonga and Zack Sabre Jr. He mentioned something Tama Tonga did in the post-match comments where he says he's aging in reverse. He seems to be getting younger. I think he's right. It seems like everybody he gets in the ring with it has a little bit of it has a fresh look and a fresh feel to it. So we'll see if there's anything that comes. That, but it was mostly just a little match at the beginning there. And then we had Shota Umino, Ren Narita, Taguchi, and Master Wato defeating the House of Torture. House of Torture still struggling. That's part of the story that they're going. This was a little bit better than usual. Dick Togo really kind of on fire in this match, was feeling his Wheaties. He was good in this one. After that, we had the Bullet Club, Kenta, Chase Owens, and Geto. This is Chase Owens' first time back in quite a while, beating Minoru Suzuki, El Desperado, and Yuto Nakashima. So they didn't have the full trios champion. Of course, Ren Narita was in the match before. We just mentioned that. So Nakashima was there to do the job and just to get Chase Owens over again. Package pile driver. Of course, it's going to be important, Jeremy, to have the guys in the Bullet Club around for a couple of weeks. We have some storylines. We have some twists and turns to execute.
Just really impressed that Geto managed to get himself out of these multi-man tags for the next couple of weeks.
Very slick on his part, I got to admit. By the way, I went back, a throwback, speaking of Geto.
Sure.
And I've been going back and watching old matches too, and I don't know when I sleep. I don't necessarily, but I went back and saw like a 6-man, 8-man tag or something from Wrestle Kingdom in 2011. That's how far back I'm going. Mm-hmm. And one of the matches on there involved Tama Tonga on one side and Geto on the other. And this was before the formation of Bullet Club or anything else. And Geto and Jado were in this match, and Geto was absolutely cut. He was in phenomenal shape. The other thing was, I didn't realize this, that Tama Tonga, when he first got to New Japan, was just doing a Jimmy Snuka gimmick. Absolutely, yeah. Jimmy. He and the bare feet with the print
The Tongas have come a long way, man.
He did the whole thing where he did the leapfrog and then the chop coming off exactly like Snook. I mean, not even trying to make it his own. I mean, that was where he was, and to see him go from doing a tribute act
to it worked for Snuka out the gate. It worked for Tama Tonga, and in a lot of ways, he faked it till he made it.
I guess so. I think that's true.
Yeah, he's at the level that I believe, always felt that he could be at, but was never given the opportunity because there was so much like depth at the top of the New Japan card. But he has stayed healthy and he stayed sustainable for all this time, and now these opportunities are opening up, and he's chomping at the bit, man. He is every bit a main event star that he is compelling everyone to believe that he is.
And I agree with you. He's really come on very, very strong right here and feels fresh. And Brad Reeder mentions, did Ren or Evil even get in that match? Feels like neither did. This one was quick. It was only 8 minutes. That one was 10 minutes and 4 seconds. And it was a lot of Dick Togo and a lot of Wato in that one. Wato, I think, ended up winning that one with the Vindable. So it was early matches. Some people have nights off. That's kind of how a lot of those worked, and certainly in this case. So after that, we had Shingo Takagi, Hiromu Takahashi, and Bushi taking on the Chaos Trio of Toru Yano, Yo, and Lio Rush. Now, this was a pretty standard by the numbers thing. It only went 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Shingo won it with a backslide on Yano. Never minding all of that, the stuff between Leo and Takahashi was as exciting as I was hoping it would be. And I'm really looking forward to this match. They met again on the undercard of the anniversary show. And the quickness of these two. Now, of course, Hiromu, as far as I know, still holds the record in the New Japan dojo in the Noge neighborhood of Tokyo as the fastest sprint. Just like he has the fastest time in the sprint in history. Leo is one of the quickest human beings I've ever seen do anything, let alone pro wrestling, as far as just that goes. And the stuff with him was really exciting. So a rather pedestrian match for the most part, except for the stuff between those two, which was a lot of fun to watch. And I keep bumping my microphone. Seasoned professional here. We have Chaos up next. I'm going to pop forward. Tomohiro Ishii, Hirooki Goto, and YOSHI-HASHI. They defeated Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Tomoaki Honma. Take a wild guess who did the job in that one. That was Ishii over Honma. Good stuff there, but it did have a lot of steam. Okada and Tanahashi seemed to have a little bit more, that they will not sleepwalk. That's not fair, but they will go through the motions in their...
Bro, they could be on their second or third gear, and they'd be other people's fourth gear. It's just one of those things that they are mechanics in the ring, and they know what to do, and they know how to get this kind of match over. And it was just a preview for the next day.
It was, and it was 3 or 4 moves each usually, but they did a little bit more in this one. I think they understood the situation a little bit more. I thought that they did more in this match, and it went 13 minutes. It was a longer match than usual before Ishii finished off Honma. And then we got to the New Japan Cup.
Woo!
So we opened up the New Japan Cup with a match that was either going to make or break us from the very beginning. First match. Now, I said on this show last week that I thought, after we went through our whole bracket with the voting with Scott Edwards, it was a lot of fun. I thought that Naito was going to win this tournament. I think I thought that was what I said right then. You thought El Phantasmo was due for a deep run. So one of us was going to be wrong. One was going to. Jeremy scared the living hell out of me.
It was a hell of a match.
It was, but I felt good at the beginning. So this match starts here. This is the opening of the New Japan Cup, and it's a biggie. And it felt good with me early with ELP on a lot of early offense, because I one of the things that I tell, I say it so often that my girlfriend sometimes finishes a sentence for me, and she's not, she enjoys wrestling but doesn't follow it the way I do. And I just said, well, ELP's on offense for 10 minutes here, and she's just like, oh, he's losing. Because like when somebody sells and sells and sells, it's but
you read the pace of the match and you're like, wow, they're making this person look real good. They're probably not winning.
Some terrific highlights though. Phantasmo had a dive from that platform that the bleachers are on when the hard cameras, the bleachers that you face with the hard camera, so they're always in the background, but the hard camera at Korakuen Hall, dove from those bleachers, that stage there, onto Naito. Then he did an Orihara moonsault, and a nice little touch from El Phantasmo where he climbed up, and then like Muto at the Tokyo Dome climbed back down like he couldn't do it. And then, of course, sprung right up to the top rope and to hit the Orihara moonsault. Nice touch. I liked it.
That jumping kayfabe 25-foot leap from the audience onto Naito.
Yeah.
That was an entertaining junction of the match as well. Just they were operating to make you think that ELP was going to win this match.
That was the story. And he kicked out of a Destino late, which I thought, and at this point I'm thinking, oh God, like I'm in big trouble here. And so then Naito tried a second Destino, but ate a super kick. The super kick has been a kill shot for ELP lately, but he tried for the CR2, got rolled up. And I was really sweating considering my pick, but in the end, Naito did manage to get the Destino, and he did get the win in 17 minutes, 32 seconds of a wonderful match. This was really good stuff from these two. And Naito survives, and the story again with El Phantasmo that went on into the anniversary show is that he's a little bit down in the mouth still and not real confident in Bullet Club's future. That came into play again the next night, but they're not ready to put the rocket onto Phantasmo yet, but I think it's coming.
I don't know if they are doing the Starscream to Megatron, where he's just like trying to like undermine the leader that seems to be David Finlay coming on up, or if they are looking to turn him face and make him a top babyface for the company going forward, just getting betrayed by Bullet Club. So there's a couple of different avenues that I feel like they may be going with here. They did everything in their power to make you believe that this guy was probably going to be one of the top contenders for the Bullet Club leadership. And then all of a sudden, in one night, in one match, they took all those plans, ripped it all up, and threw it into the air and said, ha ha, you think you know what's going on in New Japan? You don't know anything.
It is interesting what he said in backstage comments when he said that he is not leadership material. He's the class clown. Now, that can go a couple of different ways here. And so, and we're going to get into that more when we talk about the anniversary show, but that was how that left off, with him taking a loss and saying he wasn't leadership material. And that was before we knew what was going to happen at the anniversary show. So moving to that, the final match of the night, this is one that we debated a lot. And another one where you have two guys at a bit of a crossroads. Neither one of these guys is on a roll going into this match. Both of these guys are in a bit of a funk, and Taichi with just 4 guys, they're not having much success, which is the story. SANADA, while other members of LIJ are doing well, he's just kind of floating along and taking some losses he doesn't feel like he should be taking. Going into this one, who was going to continue his journey toward rock bottom? Who maybe is ready to get the run? We were absolutely torn on this. This was one of the closest matches to pick in the first round, wasn't it, Jeremy?
Yeah.
And it came down to two guys that worked a match differently. Of course, we've talked many times in this show. These guys are friends socially. They talk about how they like each other pretty openly, and to the point that I thought they were moving toward a tag team. Might still.
Yeah.
There was no peck popping. There was no joking before the match. Both men wrestled this like, this is important. I'm in a slump. I need to get out of this slump. No screwing around, right? Early on, there was a bare floor DDT from Taichi. He pulled up the pads, the mats there, and DDT'd SANADA on the floor. Taichi really went to work on SANADA, and SANADA was selling. There's the pattern again, right? But Taichi was verbally questioning SANADA's heart, and we had Chris Charlton translating for us, thankfully, because it did matter. And he was saying things like, come on, you don't want it, do you? You're like, you got no heart. And he was just saying these things. And then finally, after all this, SANADA fired up, and the crowd was into it. When he fired up, the crowd popped for it. He fought Taichi into the crowd and gave him a pile driver on the floor. The crowd loved that. All right, SANADA's showing a little bit of heart here. They got back in the ring. They fought until Taichi managed to get a ghetto clutch for a fabulous near fall there. There was a long skull end spot, and then he lets go of that, hits the moonsault to the back, moonsault to the front. You think, okay, there it is. This is over with. Nope. Taichi kicks out, which is I wasn't expecting. There was a super kick by Taichi that actually did get a 3 count, but it wasn't the finish. So Red Shoes had to pretend it wasn't. But it was absolutely all 3. But we're going with it. But after a series of counters, that led to SANADA hitting the Black Mephisto on Taichi, and then he hit his own move, which is new. He has a new move.
What was that? It looked like a DDT.
Yeah, it looked like he starts off like a Sister Abigail or a Crossroads, and instead of or a Blade Runner, that type of move where he'd kind of turn the guy over, but it ends up in a DDT position. It was something different, and he has not named it yet. He said he might need help on social media.
That was the first time, right?
First time we've seen it.
All right.
And got the pinfall there. So, it was, and Brad mentions that afterwards there was some sportsmanship there. Again, the mutual respect between these two is well established. Instead of just the fist bump, they got the full-on handshake with the eye contact. And I agree with Brad here. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with Taichi's group as they continue to just sputter. Those guys are too talented for that long term. That's not what this is. It's just them setting up something else for the future. And then, Jeremy, do you feel like maybe we accidentally somehow managed to get this right and SANADA's going to go on a long run in this tournament?
I kind of thought he was already because
you advocated for that early. Yeah,
Taichi already had the setup for being a just 4 guy. So whatever his positioning in the 2023, he was established, but SANADA hadn't been. So if you're going to move with Taichi and just leave SANADA in the dust, you're essentially moving him lower down the card, which you don't want to do. So for me, it always felt like SANADA was the guy to move forward. Now, how far he moves forward with that bracket at Kenta and Naito, and then eventually the other bracket that could be Narita, Cobb, Evil, or Ospreay, at the very least, like he's got an uphill battle before he faces the other side of the New Japan Cup. But for now, it feels like they're starting to change with SANADA's fortunes and momentum.
So that was at Korakuen Hall on the 5th, and 1,371 reported attendance there, which is a very good crowd for the way New Japan sets up Korakuen Hall. So that's a good number there. They're still not putting people up in the galleries. That's the one thing that is kind of limiting attendance there a little bit. I think when you let everybody into the joint in all nooks and or crannies, I think you can get 2,100 in that place. I think I remember seeing that back in the day before people had big sets and the gallery was still open. You could get over 2,000 in that little building, which seems amazing. I've been in Korakuen Hall. I've been lucky enough to go there, and it's a wonderful room. And if you to say that there are 2,000 people in it, it would probably surprise you.
The 2,000 seat arenas are I'm a big fan.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful atmosphere, and it sounds great in there. And the history seeps out of the pores of that building. You're very aware that every company of note and every wrestler of note that has ever gone through Japan's wrestled in that building. You can just feel it for it. Yeah. And in the steps, if you take the steps, and I recommend you take the steps and not the elevator, even though it's 5 floors up, but all the autographs and the things that people have written on the walls it's just kind of a little wrestling culture thing.
Speaking of steps, David Finlay's video, his new video that he has a little bit of a cut in there of him coming down the steps somewhere. And that is the San Jose Civic, in which he filmed a couple of vignettes of him doing a walk here or a walk there. But I went up and down that stairwell a few times, and I'm like, that is 100% the San Jose Civic in his video that he's walking through the hallways. A
little bit of trivia there. That's pretty cool. So the next night was the anniversary show, the 51st anniversary of New Japan Pro Wrestling in the building in which it all began, the Ota Ward Gymnasium. And this was one, about 2,000 people here for this one. Not quite a sellout, which surprised me a little bit. But if you look at it on paper, it was a 3-match card. You had the New Japan Cup matches and the main event, which was the tag team title match. And we're going to get through that. We're going to go through this undercard here quickly. But
real quick, let me ask you this.
Okay, go ahead.
Was the main event your favorite match on the show?
Yes, but barely.
It was not mine.
The last two. It was the last two.
No, that tag match with the juniors. That was
some good stuff.
That was a good match, man.
It's a good show. It was a good show. It opened up with a match that does end up, I think, mattering, even though it was just kind of a quickie there. But we had the Bullet Club of Kenta and El Phantasmo, solid opener. Kenta defeated Fujita, Kosei Fujita. Of course, he's the young lion in this match. But they foreshadowed with ELP saying that there's something in the back going on, and they kind of rushed out after the victory. In post-match comments, Phantasmo said very clearly that he was not happy about what he found in the back. We'll get to that, right? And Kenta has not taken a side at all. In fact, has had no comment on it. His post-match comments the last couple of days have been as funny as always, where he made fun of Kazuchika Okada tripping over the name of the event in the past, which did happen, where he called it the New Japan Puck instead of the New Japan Cup. Just a trip, which Kenta has seized upon and was doing that. His comments are always some of the highlights there. Kenta's really funny. But in the meantime, we don't know which side his character is on in all this, and so that was something that we ran into there. The United Empire, Will Ospreay, Kyle.
No, hold up. Fujita looked really good in this match. He looked like he was hanging with the rest of the guys. And this was the first of 3 times in the last 24 hours, 2 by Kevin Kelly and 1 on WWE, where the announcers went out of their way to call wrestlers comic book nerds in North America. And I was like, what is happening here? Why are you coming after it? Kevin Kelly, I don't know if he had he's got an axe to grind with his North American promotion and some of the wrestlers there, but he went out of the way to bury just general North American wrestlers. And I was like, this is weird. I hope we come back to this at some point. I hope this is a build to something. With that said, the rest of this match, I really, really enjoyed. I really like TMDK. Mm-hmm. And I think Kenta is, 2023, I feel has reinvigorated Kenta to some extent. And I don't know what exactly has motivated him, but I feel like there is a pep in his step when he is wrestling lately.
Match number 2 was the United Empire, Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher, and Mark Davis facing Tama Tonga, Toru Yano, and Satoshi Kojima. This is one where Ospreay finished off Kojima there. And this was high energy. I thought United Empire worked very hard. Every time Fletcher and Davis come in, I think they work really hard, like they're trying to impress everyone. And of course they are, but they're almost wrestling as if they want to make sure they get invited back. I think you're safe, boys. You're pretty good.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the effort. Goodness knows. I mean, this was a number 2 on the card 6-man tag. And they were working very hard in this match. And it was enjoyable. But, of course, Ospreay, Fletcher, and Davis all have big singles matches coming. They were going to be made to look strong and got the win over Kojima there. So just solid work. And we'll see where they go because there's that interesting potential there, Jeremy, for a United Empire matchup in the second round.
I think United Empire has a lot of potential in here. I saw these guys live on Friday night in San Francisco, and then they wrestled on Sunday night, Monday morning in Japan, 48 hours later at the anniversary show. They weren't able to make it for the one before Revolution. A lot of people wanted them on the Revolution card because they were in the town anyways. But, I was paying attention to the New Japan Cup announcements and match listings and knew that, unfortunately, they weren't going to be anywhere near Revolution. But I think that's okay. Because if I were to guess anything within the next 2 months, it is that the next time we see Aussie Open in AEW, they'll be carrying some IWGP tag title gold with them.
Everybody thinks Bishamon's a bunch of putzes, I'm telling you. I'm arguing against it.
They got 3 months with that run, and they just took out Okada and Tanahashi. They're made, man. They're good.
That's the point I'm trying to make. We'll get to that later. So we had next Strong Style, the Trios champions. Belt's not on the line, but they defeated the House of Torture, Evil, Show, and Dick Togo in this case. Desperado won it with a Pinche Loco on Dick Togo. This was a solid match. Yujiro was working with Shota Umino later, so he wasn't in it to slow it down. And fact of the matter is, when Evil isn't doing his endless shenanigans, he's still a pretty good wrestler. Show's terrific, and so's Togo. So pretty good match. The most important thing is afterwards, Evil attacked Ren Narita, and actually they beat down all 3 members of the group. afterwards, but Evil in particular gave the chair around the neck and then hit it with another chair, baseball swing on Ren Narita. So not done with that yet, but if this is the House of Torture team, Jeremy, the action gets an upgrade with Dick Togo over Yujiro Takahashi, and while nobody's upset about seeing Peter, at least not in this seat anyway. Yujiro is one of the only bad wrestlers in New Japan. So if they want to replace him in this feud with Dick Togo, then the matches will at least be better.
I really don't want to go right back to House of Strong Style and House of Torture again, because that's where we did, even if we're just flip-flopping through a couple of the roster switches. It's no disrespect to House of Torture. They do what they do well, but there are other factions and there are other directions that we could be going with this. And you don't have to slow your roll on Ren Narita, but you do have to make a priority of pushing him along with Shota Umino and Kosei Fujita and all the other guys that they have right now. That's really just my takeaway of this is like, it feels like a wheel spinning exercise with all the guys, just keeping the program going because it's lower on the card right now.
If you were going to do a 6-man thing and you want to keep Narita, Suzuki, and Desperado as the clear baby faces in it, then to me, a better choice might be the Chase Owens Bad Luck Fale part of Bullet Club.
Absolutely.
That I would rather see that, I guess, than go back to House of Torture again. But we'll see how
it's
that.
Just a one and done at Sakura Genesis, and we're just after I'm assuming Evil might get a win over Ren Narita and kind of set that up again. It gets Minoru Suzuki on the card. It gets Desperado. It gets a lot of these really popular guys there. It's just it feels wheel spinny. I don't know. That's the best way I can put it.
Well, they might, and it's a fair. In all fairness to Geto, maybe you don't burn a really good, a 6-man never open way thing on a loaded show anyway, right? Sure. You just do that, and then your really good match, you save that for maybe when you don't have a friggin' loaded show. And I think Sakura Genesis is going to be pretty well.
It'll be eventful, that's for sure.
It's going to be eventful, exactly. So next up, we had a special tag team match: Yo and Lio Rush against Hiromu Takahashi and Bushi. Again, this was fabulous. And Bushi absolutely kept up with these guys. And Yo, you mentioned it in a private chat we had before we did the show. Yo looks cut, shredded. Huge! And, this was terrific. Again, more with Rush and Takahashi. The key is to make Rush look as strong as possible leading up to his challenge. Hiromu's a made man. So Rush got the win here over Bushi. We've mentioned many times Bushi, the only poor guy in LIJ that's not protected, so he has to do a lot of those jobs.
If I were to guess that it was Yo as a babyface chasing Lio Rush for the junior IWGP junior title, heavyweight title at Wrestle Kingdom next year, would you call me crazy?
No, I wouldn't. And I don't, I'm not saying that's exactly where it's going to go, but no, I don't think it's crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are heading in that direction. Everybody has an edge. Hiromu has nothing left to prove when it comes to that division. He's a perennial in there, but at some point he's going to outgrow it if he hasn't already. He's there to prop up a division that desperately needs him there for whatever reason, because they haven't created the next Hiromu. And maybe it's because he's an outlier. You can't create what Hiromu is. But he's been doing the same thing for a very long time.
And what we're running into here is just anticipation for a match that I'm very much looking forward to. I can't wait until these guys get in there and one-on-one and go 15 minutes.
Lio Rush is a different beast in New Japan than I've seen him in any other promotion that's a big league promotion.
Let's hope it holds up. Yeah. So, and after that one, now it's time for the New Japan Cup, Jeremy. And we have
Shota, the roughneck.
Shooter Shota, my goodness. So let's talk about this one. Now, he's in there with Yujiro, who I mentioned is about the only bad wrestler in the company, really. There are a couple of guys who are physically unable to do it, but Yujiro is physically able. He just isn't good enough to really have good matches. So I know I'm being rough on the guy here, but I think Shota did everything he could. By the way, we talked about Shota looked cut. He was, I mean, he has changed his body quite a bit too. And we've mentioned that they're trying to make him into the next Tanahashi. I think they're going to eventually succeed. Not quite there yet, but I think the signs are in good shape here. Some interesting stuff before here, Jeremy, in the post-match comments. Shota Umino talked about while he was a little boy, that young lion Yujiro used to play catch with him, and they'd hang out. When Yuj was a young lion, of course, red shoes, main event referee, and little Shota was running around ringside and in the locker room and things. And he mentioned he even wrote letters to Yujiro while Yujiro was on excursion. So he brought some of that past up, and then says that while he a lot of Yujiro, he doesn't anymore and has lost his respect for him. So this was a basic standard Yujiro match. You're only going to be able to make it so good. He doesn't do a lot. Show came out for a distraction. Yujiro went for a low blow, but it was blocked. He managed to hit the Olympic slam, which is called the intercollegiate slam when he hits it. And then he got a pimp juice, but that was kicked out of. And then Show got the distraction again, and the low blow worked. But he set up the walking stick shot. So he went and got his big cane and tried to hit Shota with it, but Shota ducked. Then he, in a clever move, Show, sensing danger, tried to help, and instead ended up being the ropes for a satellite DDT. He just used Show to prop himself up to hit a satellite DDT on Yujiro. Then he hit the Death Rider on Show. Then he hit the Death Rider on Yujiro and got the victory. So story of this one was just overcoming House of Torture. This, like, Shota is just too much for these guys now. This, I felt, though, was a smart matchup for Shota. I still believe he's doing a deep run in this tournament and will have other big singles matches. For this one, I think it was intelligent to put him in with Yujiro. One, to get him a win. Second, no ambiguity. The issue with him facing Naito in the past is that half or most of the fans were rooting for Naito. Even the Bullet Club fans don't like House of Torture. Mm-hmm. So when he's in there with Yujiro, everyone is on Shota's side. And I think that's what he needs. He needs to have the fans just solidly like rooting for him and try to build that momentum. So I think this was a smart way to do it. And I do think that people are, I think Brad's right. I think people are in with him now. I think they're getting behind him, but having him in with House of Torture, the one thing that nobody likes, I think was a smart move.
I am starting to really believe now that we are getting to talk about the next match that Shota may just end up getting a win over Zack Sabre Jr. and then cut in his track when he meets the heelish momentum of David Finlay. That seems to be what I'm reading in the tea leaves. But let's talk about that, because that is maybe the big news of this free show that got you interested because of the headline of Okada and Tanahashi defending together, but they wanted you to watch because of this.
This was very intriguing to me. It wasn't a shock when Goto came out with David Finlay. I think we probably suspected that's where it was going. We mentioned on the show a couple weeks ago, Bullet Club tends to overthrow their leaders, not have a peaceful transition of power here. We weren't sure if Finlay beating up Jay White after hitting him with a shillelagh after Jay White lost his Loser Leaves New Japan match, and he was about to do the speech, which we were kind of hoping was the whole "I actually love you" people type of speech. We didn't get it. Finlay, being a dick, knocked him out first. What a jerk! And then, what. It wasn't explicitly said. Of course, Goto wasn't there and all that. So we weren't really sure, but we had a feeling, right? So when he came out, though, his hair is dyed black with some highlights in it. He's got all new outfit. Of course, was it a Rebel Club? And then Ghetto's with him. This is a good heel look for the dude. I really like the new look. And I think he looks sinister in a very good way without being cheesy. He wrestled this match very angry against Tomohiro Ishii. He was very aggressive, much more than usual. No goofiness at all. Ishii is great for this kind of match, and this is the perfect opponent to put him in with in the first round. Someone who can get over a match like that. His version of the Ushigoroshi looked terrific, and it was the finish. I thought, Jeremy, this was a good heel debut. There's more work to be done, and his next few singles matches are going to be important. But he came out aggressive. He came out looking pissed. He came out with a whole new look that gave him that dangerous aura. And I think it was a very healthy heel debut for David Finlay here. What did you think about this?
So I told you personally that I felt like he was dialed to 11 on his debut. When you're at a 10 and you've dialed it all the way to 11. And you look at this picture of him and he's got the dyed hair and he's got the leather. I haven't found the AJ Styles aspect of it, but there is something that he has kind of taken from all the previous leaders of Bullet Club in his design. The beard is straight out of Jay White. The two-tone hair is Kenny Omega. The shoulder pads, Evil is going to be pretty angry about the gimmick infringement on that one. There are things there that he has taken from the past and evolved through the Bullet Club. He, with those dyed eyebrows, has kind of a Ming the Merciless from Flash Gordon thing going on, which I hope they kind of dial down. That's what I mean by 11. It's just like everything is just extra.
I like it.
That you have to forget the David Finlay that came before. He is gone. Like the jean jacket and the blue denim and the white t-shirts. You're not going to see this guy anymore. This is the new and improved David Finlay. He is one of the young lions, and I got to give credit to my friend Corey Lieb. He sniffed this from the beginning that David Finlay was going to be the next leader of Bullet Club. And, it's like he's got the pedigree. He's one step below Steven Regal's kid, with David Finlay having all the legacy there. Everything is lined up for him to absolutely knock this out of the park. He's an excellent choice for this. And I kind of think that now that you've introduced him, he's the favorite to win the cup.
Let's talk about this whole thing. And I'm bringing up Brad's comment here for a reason. With House of Torture losing so much, are we in for a big storyline with them after a possible split? We have been carefully kept in the dark as to the rest of Bullet Club's feelings about this. None of the rest of them were out for this match. None of them came out afterwards for this match. Now, there's plenty of time for all that to come, but I like that they didn't do it all at once.
Phantasmo was talking on the way back from the match how he didn't like what he saw in the back.
Didn't like what he saw in the back. Now, he could be going one of two ways, where he's not happy about it, or he could be doing the Jey Uso thing, where he's like, no. See, I'm Bullet Club all the way.
Wheel gets the grease.
Well, or it could be just a matter of trying to sucker people in, right? I am Bullet Club for life. What do people expect? Like I was going to choose you, But it could also be a little bit of discontent. We don't know where Bad Luck Fale and Chase Owens are in this. We don't know. So there are different factions within Bullet Club. Of course, there's Ghetto's group and all that. But Fale has his own buddies. The House of Torture has basically been its own faction for a while. We don't know yet. And I think it might possibly be a thing where House of Torture breaks away. That's possible, just because they need something. The House of Torture has been made to look buffoonish for 6 months now. It's been a while since they were portrayed as anything but a bunch of bumblers.
Matches in dog cages.
Yeah. And it's just a thing where you wonder if this is a whole split, because also that Bullet Club roster is pretty bloated. There's about, if you count up everybody, and there's like a dozen guys. They don't need all of that. They can break it away. House of Torture can still be heels. Bullet Club can still be heels. And other people could go baby. There's a lot of ways this could go. So I do think some of the members of Bullet Club are going to say, nope, not him, I'm out. But I think also you're going to see some people maybe faint that direction and then come back into the fold and just say, Dave, my man, finally, that type of thing. There's going to be a mix. But I'm very curious to see who lands where. They've avoided the subject with everyone except El Phantasmo. Not a coincidence, Jeremy, because guess who's teaming with El Phantasmo now that the cards have been reshuffled? David
Ghetto
Finlay.
the Worker, getting off those cards, putting Finlay in instead.
Yeah, that's right. So there you have it. So we've got Finlay now. We're going to be teaming with El Phantasmo moving forward for a couple of shows, and we'll see how that goes. So a lot of layers to this onion to be peeled away.
I still think that the long-term plan for the year has got to be Ospreay and Okada, with Ospreay challenging for the title and winning. But how far do you strap the rocket on David Finlay before then, potentially for a title run, or after then for a title run, especially given Finlay and Ospreay's own rivalries? There is plenty to work with in the future, and it seems like a very smart strategy to invest in David Finlay right now.
Yeah, I definitely he's in the buy instead of a sell option on that one. So we'll see how that one goes moving forward. But I have a feeling that that's going to be a storyline that plays out all the way into Genesis and maybe even after. So there's the bracket.
Bracket. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got that. So we've there are more matches coming, and obviously we've only done some of the only two of the four quadrants. So
it looks like we'll have about 6 or 8 matches to cover by next show.
Yeah.
So,
but it feels like we're getting an LIJ meeting there in the top left, doesn't it?
It sure does seem like the SANADA potentially getting a win over Naito is in the cards to heat up SANADA, but you can never, ever rule out Naito.
And then I do feel like we're probably seeing Finlay and Shota there in the bottom right. That's my leaning right now.
Yeah. Shota over Zach, challenge for that. We accidentally skipped over it, but it looked like Shingo Takagi and Aaron Henare. We probably should have
you're right.
taken into account an upset special for Aaron Henare to challenge for the King of Pro Wrestling before losing to Tama Tonga. That would solve a lot of logistical problems in terms of going.
And you're right. I did gloss over that one. I apologize. That was a match that I missed. I was so excited to get to start to talk about Lio Rush and Hiromu that I skipped one. But you're right. Aaron Henare with a clean win with the Streets of Rage over Shingo Takagi. It sets up both a possible King of Pro Wrestling title match down the line, and then also here a preview of their singles match, and throws a little bit of question into who would win that, because I think Shingo was probably a 7 or 8 to 1 favorite going into that match, and now they've given Henare a solid win over him just to make you wonder.
So you want to get into some of these previews for some of these match cards coming up?
Yeah, let's go into the going forward here. So now we mentioned that initially, because for kayfabe reasons, they still had David Finlay listed as teaming with Hantai and Chaos members going forward. So they kept that kayfabe up until after the anniversary show, and then they reshuffled. What we are going to be seeing are more tag matches with Leo and Hiromu on opposite sides.
Oh my gosh, we didn't talk about the Okada. We didn't talk about the tag match. We're
going to do that. You're right.
Okay.
We got Shingo against Henare. I'm just doing for the cup. We're also going to see Shingo and Henare now Wednesday in Fukushima. That's going to be the first one where Finlay teams with Kenta, Chase Owens, and ELP against just 4 guys. So that should be a Bullet Club win, obviously, but will there be some issues between everybody there? Kenta, Chase, and ELP with Finlay in Fukushima. Toru Yano will face Mark Davis. Ren Narita will face Evil in the Cup matches. Friday in Yamanashi, we will have Shingo versus Henare, YOSHI-HASHI against Kyle Fletcher. And then
check this out.
Oh, there you go. Look at this. And then we will have on the 11th here in Aichi, you'll have Naito against Chase Owens, SANADA against Kenta, and then we'll have another match that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So that was pretty cool, by the way.
I got a bunch of those for all the matches.
All right. Well, we're going to get to them. We want to make sure we do talk about the main event before we move too much further here. So now this one, we had this talk with Scott last week. I felt and that this was a way to get Bishamon, who, of course, was one and done in their first title reign, a huge win to establish them further as actual champions. You always feel like, what's the saying goes, like you can win the title, but you're not a champion until you really defend it at least once. That's the thing in boxing, too, by the way. Anyone can win a belt. Can you defend it? Bishamon against Kazuchika Okada and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Here's what I felt with the tea leaves. I did not know what Kazuchika Okada would do with the IWGP Tag Team title. Mm-hmm. It's just not something that it's not something you have the singles champion do. And Tanahashi's the perfect guy that can give you a good match, and he's bulletproof, so he can lose. That's how I felt. That is how it turned out. However, this match was worked well enough that I started thinking, oh, maybe they are going to switch this because these 4 guys are that damn good. So the challengers did hold a lot of the advantage early, but I didn't feel like that's the tip off it usually is, because you have to establish, no matter what, win or lose, that these two work well together. They've teamed together before. They have. And it hasn't been too successful. They don't have a good win-loss record as a team. But they wanted to make it look like they were smooth together early. And they established Okada and Tana nicely. And then later on in the match, the advantage began to even out a little bit. And at the 15-minute mark, it felt like it was anybody's game. Didn't you think, Jeremy? Or were you confident of the result anyway?
I knew the result before I watched it,
Okay.
just because of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But your argument going into it was really compelling. Okada's got to defend that title, and going into the next few months, like, it's possible that he's carrying around 2 belts, but there were other things in play that made me think that those tag titles were going to be staying right where they were.
Okada did hit a big elbow off the top and tried to make it a combination with Tanahashi in the high fly flow, but YOSHI-HASHI got his knees up. They worked into a super kick into a Ushigoroshi by the Bishamon team. That's YOSHI-HASHI and Hirooki Goto. And then the Dodan on Tanahashi, but Okada broke that up. Bishamon then hit Okada with a reverse GTR. So we're at that point in the match where everybody's hitting their big moves on everybody. Tana with a near roll-up on YOSHI-HASHI. That was a terrific near fall there. Tana reversed Karma into a twist and shout. That looked really good. And that was at the 20-minute mark, and that was time to go home, because at that point, they had done several spots, which were brought up in commentary very nicely by Kevin and Chris, where either YOSHI-HASHI or Goto, happened to each of them at least once, was in a precarious position, and the other one made the save, with the story being that these two are so smooth and so together as a team that they have that trust that their partner is going to save them when they are in bad trouble. And Okada and Tanahashi are singles guys that don't quite have that. It came into play late where Tanahashi had YOSHI-HASHI against the ropes trying to give him an Okada roll, but YOSHI-HASHI just hung on long enough for Goto to save him. It ended up with YOSHI-HASHI putting Tanahashi in a full Nelson. Goto had his legs up. They kind of did a spinning drop with both Goto and YOSHI-HASHI getting impact on Tanahashi. That was the pin. Storyline here being, in a rare moment for pro wrestling, that the smooth as silk tag team that knows each other back to front and knows each other's moves before the other one knows it actually can beat 2 of the great singles wrestlers of its time. That story is usually told the other way, because mostly it's told in WWE, and Vince doesn't like tag team wrestling all that much. But it was acknowledged afterwards, even in the post-match comments. Okada was there in front of the Yoshinoya logos and everything else, just saying, boy, tag team wrestling is a whole separate animal, and those two are on a different level than everybody else. And I felt like the whole story of this, Jeremy, was that Bishamon are real main event guys. Like, this is something that we can headline a show with. I mean, these guys just beat the world heavyweight champion and one of the all-time legends. I thought a lot of this story was about reestablishing the tag team titles as a huge deal. Like, the guys that hold the tag team belts, that's the best team in the world. You know, you can argue that, of course, but I mean, within New Japan, the idea is that your tag team champions are the best in the world. They've just beaten 2 of the best singles wrestlers in the world, and that it's the machine taking out the 2 individuals. I thought it was an interesting story. It was a great. The match was executed wonderfully. I enjoyed every second of it. 4 really world-class guys, and I thought it told a good, healthy story for the tag team division.
It's super weird with Bishamon, because they're very much out of sight, out of mind. When you don't think about them, you do not think about these guys. But Brad's right; they are a made team. No. They won the titles last year at Wrestle Kingdom. They won the World Tag League last year. They won the World Tag League this year. They beat FTR this year for the titles, and now they defended and defeated the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion and a former IWGP Champion in this match. And so Their confidence is reinvigorated. You can see them as performers are back to a level that, frankly, they were not wrestling at or did not have that confidence or pedigree showing in the ring on a day-to-day basis. And I said for the last year, these guys were showing up and showing out on cards when other people were checked out. So I've got nothing bad to say about them. With that said, if they were to drop the titles in the next month or two, no harm, no foul. They are right back to being preeminent roster members. Even YOSHI-HASHI's probably stock has risen from his time in Bishamon.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree on one thing. Is I think that this is actually the beginning of a fairly strong run. I'm not saying they're going to hold the titles all the way until World Tag League again, but I do think that it's probably part of a story where they really establish Bishamon as the team, the standard in tag team wrestling in New Japan. They're gonna, and I think that's going to include a couple of successful defenses. I don't know if it'll be against Aussie Open. I think Aussie Open will eventually hold the IWGP tag team titles and maybe win World Tag League this year. But I do feel like they're probably going to get. This is just me reading my own tea leaves here. I feel like they're going to get a couple of successful defenses in before they drop them again.
There's been a couple of times with Aussie Open where they've been close, but not quite regarding those titles. And they're booking them incredibly strong. And if they get them to the point where they are in a tag match for the titles with Bishamon, I fear for Bishamon's chances going forward, just because Aussie Open are younger, shinier, and newer. But Bishamon has nothing to be embarrassed about or to look bad about with this run. They showed up and showed out for however long they're going to have these titles.
All right. Well, let's take a look at some of these things going forward in the New Japan Cup. Bishamon's going to hold it. They're in the New Japan Cup. Bishamon is both members. So they're not wrestling in the Cup quite this well. YOSHI-HASHI is. Never mind. He's going to be facing Kyle Fletcher. Well, let's talk about some of these. So again, tomorrow morning in Fukushima, it's going to be Toru Yano and Mark Davis. So what do we know about Yano here in the Cup history? 18 years. He's been there 18 consecutive years. Four-time semifinalist. How about that one?
Yeah. Infographic design and credit to the Chris Sampson on Twitter, friend of the show. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that he is responsible for these amazing graphics that he did and also researched on his own. So had to get that out there before we get too deep into these.
Chris is just a wonderful resource for anyone who loves New Japan, and he takes that unique statistical approach to it that's really enjoyable, and because Ghetto's booking is particularly suited for it, so I always check his stuff out. So this is pretty cool right there. Yano, the only wrestler in the quadrant he's beaten in a singles match is Evil. How about that? I don't expect that to change. I do think that Mark Davis is going to win this.
He seems to have, he's 11-6 in first round New Japan Cup matches. So Yano is the perennial one and doner. So it doesn't shock me on that one. All right, what do you got at Kyle Fletcher? Nothing.
What can you say? There it is. It's he's only had one singles match in the last 365 days.
Look at that mean face that guy's giving us on that screen.
He looks 12, doesn't he?
He does look 12.
In that picture, he looks 12 anyway. So
all right, we got Ren Narita and Evil, right?
Yeah. Let's see how's Ren doing here. This is his debut, of course, but you see he's been doing a lot of singles matches lately, and 3 guys making their debut, and 4-1 since returning from his excursion. So he has the never openweight 6-man titles, so that might limit his run in this tournament just because they don't need him to go too far, because the storyline is really with Suzuki and Desperado, but you can't count him out, can you?
Well, I mean, we can't, but then again, look who he's facing.
There you go. And look at that New Japan Cup record. This is a guy that they usually put over once or twice before sending him on his way.
Look at those shoulder pads. Of course he's mad at Finlay.
This is what the rift is going to be over.
Man, stealing my look, stealing my gimmick, stealing my leadership. I'd be angry too. I'd be evil.
That was beautifully done.
Thank
All
you.
right. So after that, we have, I can't add to that. I certainly can't top it.
All right,
We're going
to.
we got Mark Davis again. Yeah. This is his debut there. So there's Mark. And yeah, we've got that. And who else?
He's a beast, and I feel somewhat scared for YOSHI-HASHI on a one-on-one match with this gentleman, to be perfectly honest.
And we talked about it too, is the Bishamon after this high right here might need a new challenger. So obviously getting a win over one or both of the tag team champions in the tournament would send Aussie Open on the way to a title shot. So
look at the shade in the notes.
Let's see. In the third round, the New Japan, YOSHI-HASHI lost in 2 minutes flat. Third shortest match of all time. This tournament hasn't been great to him, though. He's got a losing record in it against the Quadrant, and he's, so
okay.
This
so
tournament has not been good to Yoshi.
To be clear to the listeners that aren't watching, in the third round of the 2020 New Japan Cup, YOSHI-HASHI lost to Evil in 2 minutes flat, also known as the third shortest New Japan Cup match of all time. This might not be promising statistics going forward in this cup for YOSHI-HASHI.
So his all-time record 7-9 there.
Woo!
So
we got Shingo, who should be a favorite.
4 years in a row in this one. He's 8-3. He has a 6-1 record against his Quadrant. He is 16-5 in the last years in singles records. Of course, one of the more protected guys in the company. And he was eliminated in the first round in 2020, but he has reached the final and semifinal the last 2 years. And we do not. I don't know. What do you think? Henare is going to beat him again?
I think Henare is going to beat him again. I think this is a fine King of Pro Wrestling match for Sakura Genesis.
All-time New Japan Cup record for Henare, 1-3. He has no singles wins against his Quadrant. He's lost all 3. And his singles record in the last year, 10-8. So his only victory occurred in the first round of the 2022 tournament. He defeated Yuto Nakashima, a young lion, in 8 minutes and 40 seconds. So this tournament has been rough on Henare historically. So you feel like that he's going to put some check marks in the good column in this one.
I think if we're going to at least put one in there before Tama Tonga, just cuts him off at the knees.
All right. What else we got for this one here?
Those are all I have now because those are really the only matches that we are going to be having until our next show. And so I wanted to make sure that I had the proper cards for the right stuff, and we didn't start getting ahead of ourselves on matches we assume are going to go a certain way, and they go another, because that's already happened, and that went well for us. So again, are our bracket still alive?
Yeah, they kind of are. I mean, like SANADA's in there. We had SANADA going pretty deep once we took all the votes. I will admit that I expressed concern about having SANADA go so deep, but right now it doesn't look too bad. Alive. Naito's still alive, so I'm feeling all right. Shota's in there. Shota's in there.
Finlay's still in there. I'm a little worried about that bracket at the end of who's going to survive of the 4, but the consensus said Shota, and he might Shota us a good time in the New Japan Cup.
Seriously.
Yep.
Seriously.
Oh yeah.
You were doing so well.
No. I am consistent. I'm not good or bad. I'm just consistent.
You're gonna pull a hamstring reaching for stretching for that one. Be careful now. All right. Now, again, we have other shows, so let's talk about that real quick. Aichi, Naito versus Chase Owens. That's a second rounder. SANADA against Kenta, second rounder. And then an interesting match in Aichi, I think, here, Jeremy, and that's on the 11th, which I guess is Saturday. Hiroshi Tanahashi and Okada teaming again against Ren Narita and Shota Umino on that card. It's an interesting tag match.
I remember that was the match that led Scott Edwards to think that there might be a title change.
Yeah, but Narita and Umino as a team against Tanahashi and Okada. Interesting.
I wonder if that might be setting up maybe a program with Umino and Tanahashi.
I don't know.
That would be fun.
So on Sunday, March 12th, they'll be in Shiga, and Monday, March 13th. All that before we're gonna have a lot of shows to watch again. The second round matches. So for kayfabe reasons, no card has been announced for either one of those, just because theoretically we don't know what the second round matches are going to be. Therefore, we don't know who has got to go in the tag team matches. So no matches announced for those cards as of yet, except that there will be 2 second round matches on each. So there you have it. So Jeremy, we've seen some people turn up on Ring of Honor from New Japan
we have.
Wrestling. What are your thoughts? And what have you seen that you like, didn't like? What is coming up that you like and don't like?
So, Ring of Honor. I have committed to buying the Super Card of Honor in order to potentially review it at some point for whatever reason because of the New Japan adjacency.
Okay.
But I did a wait and see to see if what New Japan content would be available on New Japan World for Ring of Honor. And as of right now, we have the Zack Sabre Jr. versus Blake Christian 15-minute New Japan TV title. But there is a Ring of Honor hub on New Japan World. It is in the English section, and you can find it there. It is very similar to the Impact content, in which recently they have put up Shane Hayes versus Speedball Mike Bailey, the Motor City Machine Guns versus the tag team now dubbed the ABC. Do you know who the ABC is, Steven Conway?
No, help me out on that one.
Ace Austin and Chris Bay are the ABC, known as the Ace and Bay Connection, and nice. I got to tell you, that's a pretty slick nickname for a team.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. That's the kind of wit and pun that'll get you to stop dead cold in your tracks on a show like this. So we're going to get this programming, and this is important to me because I do not personally want to feel like I have to invest in Ring of Honor or Impact monetarily to watch these matches featuring New Japan talent. For this cooperation, this is much more palatable to me as a fan who casually wants to catch up with my New Japan content this way. So the one match that I was able to catch on Ring of Honor that was made available to me so far was the Zack Sabre Jr. versus Blake Christian match. Boy, Zack Sabre Jr. just comes across as such a huge star on anywhere that he goes. The slate that we have for the cover is from the Ring of Honor taping taken by J.J. Williams, and I wanted to give him credit for that. But it was an exhibition match, just like he's been doing with Clark Connors, and just a 15-minute, you know what you're getting, the strong work rate. You're not going into these matches thinking that these guys are going to beat Zack Sabre Jr. on a non-New Japan card, but that's not the point. The point is to just have good talent and good shows and, put together a Ring of Honor card that is taking the New Japan, that is taking some impact, that is taking these talents that are all over the place and putting it together so that there is kind of a consistent forbidden door, if you will. You don't have the time and the real estate on AEW Dynamite and AEW Rampage to be doing these New Japan crossovers because you have your own product to be doing. But right now, Ring of Honor does not have a television program. They can basically just come and go as they please and put on a wrestling show and determine from that point on what they're going to do. When they get a television contract and are removed from Honor Club or potentially what they do with YouTube or whatnot, maybe that'll change. But right now, we may or may not have a little bit of a utopia in Ring of Honor made even better by the cooperation of allowing people to watch that content on native platforms like Impact Plus or New Japan World, so that you are not feeling like it's an extra, like it's extra cost in order to breach this bigger world of wrestling and introduce to other promotions. Have you caught any of it? What are your thoughts?
Well, no, I'm interested to see, of course, like everybody else, it's like Tony Khan is, exactly where Ring of Honor's TV ends up, if it does end up anywhere. So, and then, like I said, we'll have to see how all that goes with New Japan guys being on there. For the most part, when they, when FinJuice challenged for the Impact Tag Team titles against the Good Brothers and things, that did turn up on New Japan World. So I haven't been sweating it in the way that New Japan usually works out something so that those matches can show up for their fans in Japan. And I find that to be a healthy thing for everybody involved. To be honest with you, it's the most Impact I've watched in a while, is those matches that come across in there. And it lets you know that there is some stuff worth watching over there. Not that I don't mean that to be insulting to the Impact, but it can remind you that, oh, maybe I should check that out on Access once in a while. So I think if done correctly and carefully and with respect to all the companies involved, it can be healthy for everyone.
Yeah, I did not want New Japan World to feel like a secondary promotion that you had to pay to watch their content on another platform. That to me was my biggest hindrance towards like feeling like this was a true cooperation between two promotions. Yeah. So if you can watch Ring of Honor and you can watch, I don't know, New Japan matches where Ring of Honor guys go over there and wrestle in New Japan, I think that's going to be the true test of the cooperation here. Yeah. And seeing how that goes. Is this a one-way street? Is this a two-way street? Is this a match-by-match basis? I'm very curious about how it goes forward.
Okay. Well, we'll have to look at that. Of course, the changing TV landscape, we know that MLW seems to be in a lot of trouble. There's just a lot of things, a lot of dominoes to fall in TV when it comes to that.
Bad news.
Real bad news. And then, I mean, that's not
I'm sorry, real bad news.
Real bad news. It's I'm surprised that took you that long to get to that.
No, I did it the first time. You didn't pick it up.
I didn't pick it up. With Ring of Honor, boy, another hour of programming on. I tell you what, Jeremy, wouldn't bother me a bit if some form of Ring of Honor just replaced Rampage, which right now is a show that is dying on the vine because it doesn't feel like it's. I don't watch it very often at all, and it just feels like they're not trying that hard. If it was a separate show with separate storylines that wove into AEW. Instead of feeling like WCW Thunder, if you remember that show on Thursday nights that lasted a little while, I think that might be a healthier use of resources. But again, that a lot of that depends on Turner. If Turner worries that Ring of Honor wouldn't have the same cachet AEW does, then it's a whole thing you got to talk to them about. But
it was super strange because when I went to Rampage, they have to tape around, like it's just 1 hour, but you have to like give people a show. All the dark matches were all Ring of Honor adjacent programming. You had the Josh Woods, you had the Athena, you had the Willow Nightingale, Brian Cage. Everything that they were doing was all dark elevation programming for the Ring of Honor brand. And that's all well and good. And it's all just, and you can slap an AEW on there and have Ring of Honor like angles going on the YouTube show because it doesn't matter. But it also, if you're a canny fan of AEW, you look at that like, oh, this doesn't matter. Like, this isn't a big deal. And kind of killed the Cow Palace with that. But you live and you learn. I feel like we talked about it in other shows, but it felt like the Cow Palace was a bucket list item that Tony wanted to run and get it out of the system. And I hope he's gotten it out of the system and he runs somewhere else instead.
It's a very historic building. Of course, most people know.
Still historic. It's ancient.
Well, yeah, it'll be historic until they knock it over. But this was the company that Roy Shire's promotion ran their shows in for decades in San Francisco. Of course, Ray Stevens, Pat Patterson, the Samoans. Funny story about the Samoans out of San Francisco. If you were here, like the Samoans, Afa and Sika were wrestling fans that would go to the Cow Palace and fight with the heels all the time. Like they were so into it, they would fight with the heels. And there's a story, it might be apocryphal, but I cannot believe it, that they went to Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens, who were the top heels at the time, and just said, hey, those kids that are always getting in trouble and fighting you guys and things. Well, we're... Look, don't be mad, but we're going to bring them in and trade them. And their reaction was, oh, thank God I can take work punches from them now. So that was a story with Afa and Sika.
That changed history.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? And that was where Pedro Morales was first noticed because he was a big star over there. And Gorilla Monsoon went to work for Roy Shire and thought, man, there's this guy, this Puerto Rican guy, Pedro Morales, is over like gangbusters. You need somebody to replace Bruno. We've got a lot of Puerto Ricans in New York, might work, And Pedro ended up getting the WWF title, WWF title run. San Francisco history comes through the Cow Palace there, and it is it's a historic building. But like you said, it's hard to go back to that when you have modern arena amenities, and it is an old barn, ain't it?
I cannot understate to you how shitty it is.
I believe the San Francisco was at one point the San Francisco Warriors played there, didn't they?
No, they never played there. They played in Oakland.
Oh crud! Really? Okay. Well,
yeah, they were. I mean, they might have played a long time ago, but
yeah,
like not recently. No, they were in Oakland, right next to the Coliseum where the A's and the Raiders were playing before the Raiders left. There's a giant facility, and then they moved to the Chase Center just recently, where we saw Revolution. Beautiful building. I have nothing but beautiful things to say. One of the best arenas I've ever been to. Let's move on to our next topic.
Well, we talked a couple weeks ago about the great Muta and his very early career. Of course, Keiji Muto having the big Tokyo Dome show to say goodbye. Wanted to talk a little bit more Muto history here, if you don't mind. And one of the things where we wanted to speak of, we left off when he went on excursion, and he had gone through a little bit of Florida, but he had gone through mostly Texas and Puerto Rico. So he had finished up his run in Texas, and Gary Hart was a manager, both in the, of course, a long time associated with the Von Erichs and world-class wrestling in and out of that. He booked the beginning of the Freebird feud there. And then left not too long, but just as that one kind of got cooking. But Hart was always around, and he ended up returning back to Texas and being part of the great Muta there. Now, of course, he was Super Black Ninja in which had to do with his outfit there, the Super Black Ninja in World Class. And of course, Gary Hart had brought the great Kabuki and made a lot of money being the great Kabuki's manager and mouthpiece for years and years. Well, Gary recognized the talent when he saw one, and he recognized an opportunity to glom onto it and hang onto it for dear life. So he attached himself surgically, I believe, to Keiji Muto and got him in with the Crockett's. So he moved over to World Championship Wrestling from Texas. And of course, the world-class territory was starting to die out, to be honest. Of course, a lot of tragedies with the Von Erichs and all the things that happened there as that company began to fall apart. And time to leave. Luckily for Muta and luckily for Hart, the World Championship Wrestling understood that they had a special talent on his hands. So Super Black Ninja was renamed the Great Muta. He was given Gary Hart as his mouthpiece, which is a good idea. Muta was not ready for English and still isn't really. He never did bother to pick it up too much and didn't need to. He was more mysterious not speaking. Gary Hart brought him in. And then, it was one of those things where he debuted at a TV taping, and he had a squash match there. He also faced a Junkyard Dog at his first WCW TV taping, lost that one by DQ. That's going to be a theme with the Great Muta. And at first, he worked mostly just TV tapings. And they put him in with really good workers, though. So there were a couple of them, not Junkyard Dog, but never mind that one. But guys like George South, Rip Rogers, these guys were terrific wrestlers. So they gave him a little bit of a better situation than other guys. I think they kind of understood that this was something important. Also, Steve Casey, who was a very solid worker. They put him in with Steve Casey a lot. And then he worked with Eddie Gilbert once also, and then he would come into play a little bit later. On April 23rd of 1989, he faced TV champion Sting for the very first time, which was a DQ loss in Huntington, West Virginia. That was not for TV. It was a little bit of a tester match to see how the chemistry was, and Sting and Muta had chemistry right from the beginning, and they knew exactly which program they wanted to point him toward. In May, he won a 3-on-1 handicap match at a TV taping, just to give you an idea of how hard they were pushing the Great Muta. He was beating multiple opponents. And at first, he just went around the horn. There was still a big house show circuit back then. And he was beating Doug Gilbert, Steve Casey, again, really good workers. So he was having decent matches over there and winning those. Building him up. And of course, Gary Hart would be on TV every week, talking him up and talking about Sting. They went back to Sting in Richmond, Virginia, another disqualification loss there. Then Charleston, South Carolina, Baltimore, Chicago, same result. So now they're going with it full time. He is now chasing Sting for the World TV title. He even went over Scott Steiner at the end of May. Now, that was before Scott was Big Papa Pump and all that, but he's moving his way up the card. After that, Ricky Steamboat. More DQ losses, but with opponents like Sting, Steamboat, Steiner, Eddie Gilbert, it showed that they were really into what they were seeing. Like, this was a guy that they were taking very, very seriously. They moved into the Great American Bash Tour. Now, what they did with this one was Again, Gary Hart's calling out Sting constantly. You're scared of the Great Muta. The Great Muta is going to get you. All this stuff. They came up with these things that are called Dragon Shi matches. That's a SHI, Dragon Shi matches that involve fire. Because of course he was using the mist and things. And through most of the Great American Bash Tour in 1989, he was beating Eddie Gilbert by count out in these Dragon Shi matches. So he would shoot the fireball at Gilbert and he would get counted out. And all along, Gary Hart is challenging Sting over and over again, saying Muta's after him. And what happened was Eddie Gilbert was the one that kind of stepped in front of Sting and saying, I'll take your guy on, which of course was, the number 4 babyface, number 5 babyface losing to the guy on the way to the number 1 guy. Fair enough.
Sure.
At the Bash, Muta also beat Scott Hall in Marietta, Georgia. And I don't even know if he was the Diamond Stud yet at that point. I think he might have still been just Scott Hall. Rick Steiner in Springfield, Massachusetts. Yeah. Randy Rose in Memphis at the Mid-South Coliseum. That's of course, that's the home base of the Memphis territory. Randy Rose was a big Memphis. I had runs in Memphis before. They did. I thought this was funny. Instead of doing the Dragon Shi match, they did a coal miner's glove match with Eddie Gilbert in Philadelphia, probably because Philadelphia was like, no fire in our building. We don't want fire in here. So that was probably not allowed. And at the Bay-Per-View in Baltimore. So the Bash was a tour that went around all the house show, the major towns, and then they would have a pay-per-view at the end or toward the end. I think there were some Bash cards even after the pay-per-view, but the pay-per-view was in Baltimore that year. And Sting beat Great Muta to hand him his first non-disqualification loss in a TV title match. That was Muta's first job, so to speak. Every other loss had been by DQ, probably because he blew mist on somebody or threw fire or Gary Hart interfered, that type of thing. They protected him. He lost, but he didn't get beat. And I thought this was interesting, that pay-per-view in Baltimore. Would you like to hear some of the other matches? Just to put it in context. The main event, NWA World Heavyweight title, Ric Flair defeated Terry Funk in 17 minutes, 23 seconds. Hell yes. War Games match, Road Warrior Animal, Road Warrior Hawk, the Midnight Express, and Steve Dr. Death Williams defeated Fatu, Terry Gordy, Michael Hayes, Jimmy Garvin, and Samu.
Jeez.
How about that?
Pretty good card so far.
Lex Luger defeated Rick Steamboat by disqualification for the U.S. title. Good luck, Rick. That one, Lex Luger wrestled a long time. Wasn't good for any of those years. But Sting and Great Muta were 6th on that card in their title match. The Steiner brothers defeated the Varsity Club, Mike Rotunda and Kevin Sullivan, just before them. And this is my favorite here. You had a tuxedo match. Jim Cornette defeated Paulie dangerously. So you get Jim Cornette. You could have
that match now. You could do that match now.
Turn into a shoot. Cornette again defeated Paulie dangerously. And who doesn't look at Jim Cornette and Paulie dangerously and say, boy, I hope one of them gets their clothes torn off?
Not me. Who would have
Ole
thought?
Anderson. Ole Anderson, your booker, ladies and gentlemen. Ole Anderson. Sting, he got his first win over Sting at the Kiel Auditorium on August 5th. That was a non-title match. That was in St. Louis, the legendary Kiel Auditorium. And then they went back to Sting matches after that Bash tour. So everyone had seen Muta like beating Eddie Gilbert and things like that. And then at the pay-per-view, he lost to Muta, but then they went back to it again, doing DQs and no contests and things. Sometimes Steve Williams and Scott Hall got thrown in there, but it was mostly he and Sting. Muta finally defeated Sting on September 3rd at the Omni in Atlanta to win the TV title. On the 12th, only a few days later there, at Fall Brawl, Sting and Flair teamed up to beat Muta and Dick Slater. Dick Slater and Terry Funk had been brought in to Gary Hart's stable. This was all going to be building to what would become a very famous Halloween Havoc match. So now you've got a crew, right? You got the Great Muta, you got Dick Slater, you got Terry Funk. He defended the TV title against Sting, Dick Murdoch, losing almost every time by disqualification. Right? If you look down the results there, it was just DQ, DQ, DQ. But he was still the champion. He faced Flair in a singles match for the first time in Baltimore on October 14th. Guess the finish? You're right. It's DQ. He started working tags with Slater and Funk against various combinations of Ric Flair, Brian Pillman, and Sting. And then at Halloween Havoc, they had the Thunderdome cage match. Do you remember this?
No. So
get ready for this one. Just to make sure we book the living shit out of this. Listen to this one. So we have a Thunderdome cage match. This is, and get ready for it, an electrified steel cage. Now, it's an electrified cage.
Tina Turner around?
Ric Flair and Sting facing Terry Funk and the Great Muta. Each team has a guy with a towel. Of course, it's Gary Hart for the heels, and it's Ole Anderson for the baby faces. The guest referee for this is Bruno Sammartino. So there you go. That's the main event, the Thunderdome cage match. So the thing ended up with Terry Funk and Ric Flair's figure four. Before we get to the finish, there was a moment actually where some of the decorations, they had this, it was, keep in mind, this is like in the late 80s WCW, so everything was very plastic and cheesy. It
had an aesthetic that you know of, yeah.
So part of the damn set caught fire on the cage, and the electrified cage. So they're looking at this and they're like, how do we put out this daggone fire? And Muta actually climbed up what was supposed to be an electrified cage, but it kind of gave it away. The damn thing was on fire. Had to do something about this. So he just climbed the cage and blew mist on the fire and put it out. So considering the situation, that did look pretty cool.
I mean, that's one way to break kayfabe and keep kayfabe at the same time.
So, yeah, a little bit, right? Yeah. On the other hand, what are you going to do? Cancel the match? You cancel the match?
Muta's mist is more powerful than an electrical cage.
An electrical cage. The electrified cage did not come into the match at all. They almost dropped the idea. At one point, Sting climbed up, and I guess they decided to say the top of it was electrified because he reached up at one point and snapped his hand back like he had taken a little bit of a jolt, but didn't really play into anything after that. Well, how could you, right? Sure. So anyway, the finish was interesting. The Hart, so Terry Funk is in the figure four with Ric Flair. He's in agony. He's dying. His leg is breaking. He's bending 6 different directions, blah, blah, blah. Gary Hart refuses to throw in the towel, even though Funk is begging him to throw in the towel. Finally, Ole Anderson comes in, decks Gary Hart. The towel flies out of Hart's hand and lands on Bruno Sammartino's shoulder, who sees it and calls for the bell because obviously Gary Hart threw in the towel. So they even did a screw job on that. So, I
love and hate pro wrestling all at once sometimes.
By November, Muta had moved on to Ric Flair. So the Sting part of this feud had kind of worked itself out. Everybody had seen it a couple of times now around the horn. So he moved on to singles matches with Ric Flair across the board. More DQ losses. Ole Anderson had a pattern as a booker. He didn't want to beat Muta very much at all. But late in November of that year, after coming in February, the losses started to get a little cleaner. Fewer disqualifications. In Starrcade 89, there was an Iron Man tournament where it was a round robin with 4 singles wrestlers and 4 tag teams. And what would happen is they would each face the other people in the round robin. So it was a one-night round robin. So you would have 3 matches. And Muta went 0-3. He lost to Flair, Sting, and Lex Luger. So writing is on the wall at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
His final record, for a legendary run, he's known as being the Great Muta in the United States. If you mention Great Muta, a lot of people know him. His record was 58 wins, 69 losses, and 7 draws, despite being heavily pushed the whole time because he did so many DQ finishes. And
if you can create a lasting memory, it doesn't matter some of those wins or losses.
Yeah. Well, nobody had seen anything like him before. I remember when Muta came in, the handspring elbow. No one in the United States had done anything like that. He still has a cool looking elbow drop where he kind of comes off the ropes and he does that, just the way he steps and the way he drops. And I always said that Keiji Muto / Great Muta was one of the more explosive wrestlers. The way he moved, he could go from 0 to 60 like nobody else. When he would just snap that thing up in that very quick backbreaker and then scamper up the ropes and hit that thing. No one had the fast twitch like he did, that fast twitch muscles like he did. And so he looked different and he worked different, certainly than a lot of people think that when they think Japanese wrestlers, they go to Mr. Saito and Mr. Fuji throwing salt in the WWF. And Saito in that team was a terrific wrestler, but WWF style was that you're kick and punch and throw salt. So that was what we were used to with Japanese wrestlers. So Muto looked different. Certainly Great Kabuki didn't do a whole lot either. Again, just kind of short little karate moves and missed and all that. So he looked different. In January 2nd, 1990, he lost the TV title to Arn Anderson. And after that, they brought in Kendo Nagasaki, who he was associated with early in his run in the United States. He was brought in to pair up with Muta and Buzz Sawyer and things, and they just pretty much just kind of lost on the way out. So his last match of his WCW run was almost a year to the day from his first one. Not quite a year, but it was in Corpus Christi, a cage match loss with Buzz Sawyer and the Dragon Master to Flair, Ole, and Arn. And then it was time to head back to Japan. So he came back a little while later, and it was interesting to hear. Now, we mentioned when he left, he was in the mix with Antonio Inoki and Tatsumi Fujinami and Kengo Kimura. He left as a pretty big star, and then was gone for another year. But this is he was really poised to take the top spot then, and we're going to talk about that next time as to what happened to him there and where New Japan was at the time. Because when he came back, there was a new kid in the opening matches when he returned to Japan named Minoru Suzuki. So, by the way, I just thought that was interesting. So by the time he comes back, it's Minoru Suzuki as the young lion, to give you an idea of the time frame we're talking about here. So anyway, we'll get more into that in coming weeks, talk more about Muta and his return to Japan and his ascent to the very top of the company.
Excellent work, my friend, as always. Excellent work.
I had fun putting that together. It was a lot of reminiscing there, because I was a big fan of both WWF and WCW at the time, and Muta was pretty damn cool. So I was surprised by his win-loss record, because I guess we always saw him win on TV, but Muta was pretty cool. So I had fun going back and remembering some of these.
I always learn something when I'm talking about this stuff with you. Okay, so do you have any social media stuff that you want to push or anything like that?
Well, I was just on the 5-Star Joshi show with Scott Edwards last week. I encourage everyone to go back and listen to that. We talked about my journey through becoming a Stardom fan and how I did it and what I think of some of the stuff there. And especially if you're like me, just getting into Stardom because New Japan has been bringing them into the fold and making them part of the story. And, perhaps you always knew that Stardom was really good, but you hadn't watched it yet. It's really good. And, but we also talk about some of the current storylines and the factions and the situations and how to become a fan of Stardom and get into the story a little bit. I encourage everyone to do that. It's been a great time for me. So that's what I did, of course. And I have at Steven Conway 88 on Twitter and ringsidereplay.com. How about you?
So I just want to go back one more time. Thank Chris Samsa for the infographic design and credit.
Absolutely. Very cool.
Really helpful information there. Title photography, credit to JJ Williams, Wrestling Observer newsletter, where you see that amazing Zack Sabre Jr. photo from Ring of Honor. We have a Discord. The Discord is now live. Invites public are closed, but if you would like to join, email gg@fightgamemedia.com. Tell him that you heard it on the Speaking of Strong Style show, and he will get you set up into the Discord. In the Discord, if you are a member of the Patreon, $5 a month for Fight Game Media, you can get some perks in the Discord. You can also get access to the great episodes full of Brace for Impact with Mike Gilbert and JD Oliva, the Dynamite Show with Paul Fontaine and Jeff Hawkins, which is live reactions of Dynamite every Wednesday night immediately after the show, as well as WCW 96, which is Garrett Gonzalez and John LaRocca recapping the year that was in WCW 96. These are all the things that we offer to you at Fight Game Media. I have done my hard push. I'm calling it a day. Steven, take it out.
All right. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. And, of course, the podcast version of this will be up soon. And for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. Thank you again for joining us for Speaking of Strong Style. Plenty of shows coming up next week. It's going to be a lot to talk about. Make sure you join us here live, and we will see you then. Take care, and we'll be back with more soon.